Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jen and today's video is going to be my July wrap up. Now there are a couple of days left in July, but I think I have kind of tapped out on my reading for the month. So we're going to go over the books that I was supposed to read, and then we'll go through the books I actually read. In the month of July, I finished 7 books for a total of 2,503 pages, which I'm cool with. Every single book that I actually read in July was contemporary romance. Every single one of them. These are all of the books that I was supposed to read from my TBR takedown TBR. However, I did not read all of these. I have decided to DNF Bel Canto by Ann Patchett, and I'm going to unhaul this. I tried listening to the audiobook. I got 16 pages in, and this is not a me book. I didn't even realize what the heck it was actually about until I think I read like a Goodreads review afterwards, but this is not a me book. And so despite the fact that this was supposed to make me feel things, I did not get very far into this, and I'm just not gonna bother continuing, and I'm gonna get rid of it. And then there were 2 books on my TBR that I didn't even try, and the first was, despite the fact that I wanted to, The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding by Alexandra Bracken. This was a pick for the middle grade prompt. However, I think this would work better in like the spooky season, because that's exactly what this is. I did actually, now that I think of it, I did get 22 pages into this, and it did not hold my attention. So I am excited to, I do want to reread this at some point so that I can read the sequel, but it just wasn't going to happen this month. And then the other book that I did not even attempt, actually I did. I think I got a few pages in and just wasn't, I was about to slump, and I could tell. So I just put it down, and that is The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, which was for the prompt Rachel Lynn Solomon. I do still want to read this. I do want to read this at some point, and this did fit the theme of the month. However, I think when I went to read this, I thought I was burnt out, and so I decided just to put it down. I will get around to this at some point. The prompt stays on the wheel. So I am taking, where did I put, oh, I am taking this off of the wheel. There will be a wheel refresh for September. So I have taken this option off the wheel. Rachel Lynn Solomon will stay on the wheel, and so hopefully it'll come up again and we will have a reason to actually read this, and I will want to. The first book I read in July was not on my TBR, and that is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is a contemporary Grumpy Sunshine, fish out of water romance that follows Piper, who is basically a socialite, and after she gets arrested, is sent to this small town to kind of run a bar that she apparently owns from her stepfather is a like big movie executive. So her biological father passed when she was young, so she has connections to this small town, and her stepfather sends her back there to basically run this bar that she has inherited. And there she meets what's his name, Brendan, who is a grumpy crab fisherman. I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was pretty good for a little while, and then I don't know, like once the relationship kicked in between Piper and Brendan, like I feel like Brendan became almost like a different person. Like you've got this closed off grumpy man who, the second he decides to give in, I guess, to his feelings for this woman, I felt like he turned into a different person. Like, and there's nothing wrong with this in general, but like he started like dirty talking, and I was like, where did this come from? It felt out of character. And then by the end of it, I was just kind of meh about the whole thing. This is my second Tessa Bailey. I do have Hook, Line, and Sinker that I am going to try to read soon. However, I think what I have discovered is that maybe Tessa Bailey isn't for me. There's nothing necessarily wrong with any of these. I'm just meh about them. This is my second Tessa Bailey. I did not like the first. This was better than Fix Her Up. I enjoyed this a lot more than Fix Her Up, but this just kind of was just meh to me. And I wish that it was not, but I think I might like the second book better. And I think I liked, was her name Hannah? I think I really liked Hannah, and I liked where the relationship was going with her and Fox. So I am going to be reading that, but this was not my favorite. And if I don't like the other ones, I'm just going to kind of swear off Tessa Bailey and get rid of these. The next book that I read in July was Written in the Stars by Alexandra Bellflower. I really enjoyed this. This is a sapphic contemporary romance that follows, I can remember anyone's name, Darcy, who is set up on a date with Elle by her brother. Darcy was set up by her brother to go on a date with Elle. And they just is disaster. But Darcy goes back and basically lies to her brother and say that they had this really great date. So the next time that her brother sees Elle, he's like, oh, you have this really great date with my sister. And now they have to basically pretend to be dating because Darcy told a lie. I really enjoyed this. I really liked Elle runs a astrology Twitter account, is working with Darcy's brother, whose name I do not remember, Brendan, who runs a online dating app, and he is working with Elle to kind of add astrology into their algorithm. As someone who really likes astrology, I really enjoyed that. I have grabbed the other two books in this series, one that follows Brendan and the other that follows Elle's best friend. So I'm super excited to continue on with this. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. The next thing that I read was The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This is a contemporary romance that follows Kai, who has autism, and what is her name? Esme, who, this was a little strange. So Kai's mom went to Vietnam. And ended up convincing Esme to come back to America to marry her son. It was a little weird. And she basically brings her home, moves her in with Kai, and they're like, you basically have to spend the summer kind of trying to fall in love with them, and so she can have this life in America that she doesn't have in Vietnam, because she's got a daughter and a family to take care of, and they all live in like a 1-room house. I mean, I enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. It was nowhere near as good as The Kids Quotient. Like, the writing was fine. I think the story was just a little, just not as immersive and not as intriguing. I did like the way that the relationship progressed, and I am excited to read the final book in this trilogy soon. It is on my TBR for August. I did like getting to see Michael and I can't remember her name from book 1 in here though, and Quan, who will be the main character in book 3. And yeah, I liked it. It was not as good as Kiss Quotient, but I enjoyed this. I'm so excited to talk about this one. The next book I read was Only One Is Us by Chloe Leese. I am currently now a Chloe Leese fangirl. I loved this. I gave this 5 stars. This is a contemporary romance that follows Willa. This book follows Willa, who is an athlete on her school's, during college, on her school's soccer team, and she's asking her professor for the notes because she's had trouble attending class and paying attention in class, and he directs her to Ryder, who's this big burly guy in their class, and he ignores her. And Willa is very she's a very short fuse. So then she decides she hates Ryder, who then doesn't understand why this woman hates him, because it's not that he was ignoring her. He did not hear her. He is deaf. He is deaf from he contracted meningitis like early in his college years. So he could not hear her and has basically been mute for, I think, years. But when the professor continues to kind of stick them together, they develop this like bantery, challenging relationship, and that develops into something more. This book, I did a shit job explaining what it is about, but it is so good. Ryder, and I think a lot of this has to do with Ryder. Ryder is this guy here, and he is just a flannel wearing, what does she call him? A lumbersexual Neanderthal. There is a point in the middle of this where Willa's having a bad day and Ryder brings her like candy and alcohol, and it, for some reason, like, he just showed up with it, and oh, it's just, I think he made this a 5-star. Like, the writing was good, there's some good smut in here. The back and forth between Willa and Ryder is so good in a way that's not, sometimes when you get that banter, it can be really, it's a lot. It could be very malicious, like, even it's supposed to be like flirty, it can be very mean. It was not that at all. It was basically the two of them just kind of challenging each other over and over again. And I really love this. I am currently making my way through all of the Chloe Lease. I need to acquire them all, but the Bergman Brothers is a 7-book series that follows the 7 Bergman brothers, and most of them are soccer players, so they're all sports romance. I'm so excited to get to the rest of the series. This was 5 stars. I'm really glad that this came up last month, so that I actually got around to reading it. The next book I read was my reread for the reread prompt, and that was The Roommate by Rosie Danon. This follows, I can never remember anybody's names, Clara, who moves from Connecticut to California to basically be with this guy. But when she gets there, the guy's like, hey, I'm going on tour with my band. I'm leaving you. We were supposed to, you know, be roommates in this house. You can still stay, but I've rented out my room to this guy that he, I think, got off Craigslist. And Clara is very, she's also a little bit of a, socialite isn't the right word. She comes from Greenwich. She's got very high society where, like, her family is known to like, she's trying to avoid drama in her life so that she doesn't end up in Page 6, and like, so, but it turns out that Josh, the guy that the other room has been rented to, is a porn star. So Clara, being uptight as she is a little freaked out, but the two of them come together in friendship with a little bit extra, and then go into a really interesting business endeavor, which I really enjoyed. I love this book. I gave it 4 stars both times I've read it. I think there's a bit at the end that just, like, not towards the end, that like dragged. I was like, let's move it, which I think may have been literally the only thing that kept this from being 5 stars. Josh and Claire are great main characters. This book is very reflective of my ring light. So she's just trying to avoid scandal, and what better way to not avoid scandal than by getting involved with Josh and his profession. I am excited that I've reread this because I can now move on soon to The Intimacy Experiment, which is the second in this duology, and so I can finish up this series. Let me also tell you Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. This might be my favorite romance of all time. It might be one of my favorite books of all time. Boyfriend Material follows Luke, who has famous parents, and from like the 80s. So they're kind of, I don't want to call them has-beens, but like they've had their time. However, Luke is still kind of sort of famous. And so like when he ends up in compromising positions in public and gets photographed, he ends up on websites and newspapers and all that other fun thing that happens when people get caught in compromising positions and are somewhat famous. And he works for a charity, and as his latest kind of faux pas becomes public, that wasn't really a faux pas, the charity he's working for is starting to lose donors because of traditional stupidity. And in order to salvage his reputation and hopefully get the donors back, Luke comes up with a plot to get a fake boyfriend so that the public could see him having a healthy relationship and being more acceptable. I am using this all in context where people are just wrong, but so that he can basically have a better reputation publicly, and is kind of thrown together with Oliver, who he's met before. They don't really get along. It's more of an opposites attract thing rather than like enemies to lover, but like a little bit. They like to tease each other. And Oliver needs a date to like a family thing. So they agree to fake it. So they, will purposely go out in public together, and and then they just spend time together and they get to know each other, and then eventually fake feelings turn real. And it's a fake dating book. We all know how these go, but this is Oliver and Luke are two of my favorite like characters. They're both so, this sounds terrible, they're so like both emotionally damaged by life. Luke by his father mostly, Oliver by his family, and they just neither of them believe that they deserve actual love. And to see them both come together and for both of them to learn to accept themselves and to accept love from each other is my absolute favorite thing. I love this book. This is my second time reading this book. I could read this book forever. Again, this is a 5-star read. There is a little bit in the middle that like drags, but I don't care because you get through it, and everything else is just the most wonderful thing I have ever read. The sequel to this, Husband Material, comes out in like a week, not even. It is pre-ordered the second it gets here. I don't care what other readathons, I don't care what else is going on. The second it gets here, it is being read. So I'm very excited that I reread this, and so excited to move on to the sequel. And lastly, we have The Godparent Trap by Rachel Van Dyken. This, if you've seen the movie Life as We Know It, it's basically the same thing. This follows Colby and Rip, and they one time had a really bad date that did not go well, and have been sort of hating each other since then. Colby is a travel blogger, so she is perceived as flighty and irresponsible by Rip, who is an accountant and very by the book and very color inside the lines. When Colby's best friend, Monica, and who is Rip's sister, and Monica's husband, what's his name? Brooks. Monica's husband, Brooks, die in a car accident, Colby and Rip are left to raise their 2 kids. One is 5 and one is 3, I think. So they basically are thrown together in living together where they don't like each other, and they have to raise these kids while they're grieving. Again, it is very Life as We Know It, which is one of my favorite movies. However, this book only got 3 stars from me. The writing was good. This, like, it's weird because, like, it's like formatted almost like a middle grade. Like, the font is too big and the margins are too wide, and what is this? And I think it would have benefited from being a little bit longer. I think the whole book takes place, like, over 2 or 3 weeks. So it helps that Colby and Rip have basically been harboring feelings since this really bad date. But other than that, they go from hating each other to being in love in, like, 3 weeks, which, sure, but that was not something I really enjoyed. Rip was an asshole for too much of this and in too many ways. Like, the whole first bit of this, I was literally like, if he does X, I'm DNFing, and he thankfully did not, but he was a jerk. He was like, she stays home and she just does nothing all day, but she's taking care of the kids and she doesn't know how to cook. So and he's got this mentality and this impression of her that he can't let go. Also, he doesn't understand that staying home with 2 kids is a job. And so, like, this had really big potential for me, but it just, like, at the end of it, it just didn't make sense. Some of it was really good. Some of it enjoyed. The heat level in here is tiny. I was actually expecting this to fade to black, and it did not. But like, it wasn't great. So this came out at 3 stars, and it is the last book I read for the month, which sucks, but you know what? Overall, we had a pretty good month. All right, this is everything that I read in the month of July. We got a 5-star reread and a new 5-star, which, you know what? If you've seen any of my 3 or 5-star videos so far this year, I don't get a lot of 5 stars. So finding a new one was very, very, very exciting. I think, okay, if I'm gonna pick a favorite book, it's probably gonna be this, because like, this is just a favorite in general. However, I'm gonna pick 2 because I am gonna be that person. If you take anything, if you want to read any of these books, read these 2, please. Please. This one. 5 stars for both of them. Amazing for both of them. Please read these. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite read of July was. Or what was your most disappointing read? What book surprised you? Only One of Us definitely surprised me. Please like this video if you have liked it, and subscribe if you have not already. I would greatly appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.